Welcome to the Screen the Screener College Basketball Podcast with your hosts, Mike Randle and Gus Kearns.
Rick Pitino's back. We knew he'd be back. We knew Rick Pitino, one of the greatest coaches in college basketball history, would return. Sure, there's been scandals that have come around. He had some issues in Hawaii when he was out there. There were the issues with the woman he had the affair with when he was at Louisville and paid for her to have an abortion. There was the $100,000 that was paid to Brian Bowen, the recruit at Louisville from Adidas. And of course, there was a sweeping scandal in 2015 where the former director of basketball operations at Louisville was found to have provided strippers and prostitutes to players and recruits. Obviously, the situation with the affair, that's a moral issue. That's something that really is a personal off-the-court issue. But if you look on the court, the issues that have sort of swirled around Rick Pitino have never found the bullseye on the accusations. Now, those that don't like Coach Pitino are going to disagree, but you're wrong. When he was out in Hawaii, he was accused of giving plane tickets to a player, arranging for athletes to get used cars, and giving coupons for free food at McDonald's. Sort of pales in comparison to some of the things that we've heard recently around Sean Miller in Arizona, around Will Wade with the phone call in LSU. I made a strong-ass offer. What offer did you make, Will? You made an offer for the player to come, or they didn't come. What's the offer? The Christian Dawkins scandal with Louisville paying $100,000 for Brian Bowen was never proved to be connected to Pitino. It was the Adidas situation, of which I believe he settled that court case and has moved on. And as far as the strippers with the players, that's a tough one to prove also. And to the common person who's never been involved in college athletics, you probably think that's a joke. But do I think Rick Pitino arranged for strippers to come for his players? No, I don't. I think college kids do that a lot on their own. So if you break it down, the accusations against Rick Pitino on the court have really not been as strong. And so when I heard that Rick Pitino was coming back to coach Iona, it didn't surprise me. Gus and I have talked about this on the podcast. We knew he was coming back. He was absolutely coming back. Went over in Greece, was successful. Now everything's been settled. And because of the coronavirus, not many teams are turning over coaches. I mean, somehow Shaka Smart still has a job in Texas. Tell me how. I have no idea. Especially when he's lost Uke Locklich to Illinois Chicago, the Eternal Flames. Remember them? But Iona needed a coach because Tim Clues, who's done an amazing job at Iona, just amazing. Coach Clues has been fantastic since arriving in 2010 after leaving a very successful program at CW Post. In those 10 years that he's been at Iona, the Gaels, coming into this year, had won 4 consecutive MAC tournament championships, and they had won 5 of the last 7 and had appeared in 7 consecutive MAC tournament championship games. Think about that for a second. 7 years in a row, they reached the tournament champion game. I mean, talk about peaking at the right time. But because of health issues, he was not able to coach the team this year, took a leave of absence early. He ended up having to resign at the end of the year because of those health issues. So certainly we hope he and his family are doing well. And Coach Clues did a fantastic job. And he sort of stocked the cupboard, if you will, for a small mid-major like Iona to become attractive to Rick Pitino, who is now returning home to New York, where it all started for him. And so Coach Pitino is in Iona, and the recruits are pouring in. He had already grabbed 5 commitments since his announcement last Thursday. And just today, he grabbed his 6th commitment, adding NBA Academy Africa big man Nelly Jr. Joseph, 6'8", 230-pound post prospect. He is physical. He is strong. He's someone who's going to be a tremendous rebounder and runner and athlete for the Gaels. That's 6 commitments in 5 days. Rick Pitino doesn't move the meter. I think he does. And so today, as our team recap series rolls on, we're going to bring in one of my good friends from social media, one of my good friends from Twitter, Guy Falotico. You can follow him on Twitter at Iona Guy F. He is the moderator of IonaHoops.com since 1998, folks. That's 22 years. He's a writer and editor for 25 years at that site. He has served Iona basketball and the school in many, many different capacities. He is a true insider. And so Iona basketball, which is now on the map, despite the fact that New Rochelle right now is being called the epicenter of the coronavirus and certainly is being affected like all of us here on the East Coast and across the country. The recruits are rolling in. Why, as Guy says? Because Rick Pitino's name moves the meter. And one of the biggest storylines next year in college basketball is going to be the Iona Gaels, the Rick Pitino Redemption Tour, and a program that many across the country won't realize has been really successful without Rick Pitino. So what can they do with him? I used to live in New Rochelle. I used to go to those games with my wife. It was a very exciting place. It's a tough place to play. Friday night games over there at the Heinz Athletic Arena. It's going to be rocking. And the Gaels, who have been the dominant team in the MAC, just got one of the most dominant coaches in the history of college basketball. So who better to talk about it than Guy Falotico? Let's get Guy in right now and talk some Iona Gaels basketball. The Screen the Screener College Basketball Team Recap Series rolls on here today, and we're going to go to MAC action, folks. We're going to talk Iona Hoops. Now, of course, we need to talk Iona Hoops because Rick Pitino has returned. He's returned to college basketball, and he will be the head coach at Iona moving forward. And today we have an expert on the Gaels, Guy Falotico from IonaHoops.com. You can follow him on Twitter. Him and I have been going back and forth for years about Iona, at Iona Guy F on Twitter. He is an expert. He is heavily involved in Iona. So many things he can bring us here. And he's joined us here in the Screen the Screener Team Recap Series to talk about the Gaels. Guy, thanks so much, man. First off, how are you doing? Is the family safe? How are you doing in this crazy time we're living in right now?
Well, honestly, it's probably affected me. I'm a little spoiled. It's affected me a lot less than it has others. I work from home normally anyway, as does my wife. So other than having the kids home, everybody is safe and everything's fine here. But we're used to kind of living home and doing our thing, and just a little trapped. But that's my biggest complaint compared to what I'm seeing all these stories about the ER docs in New York City and all of that. It's such a terrible thing, and I hope this can get resolved soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've had a lot of experience here with Iona. I mean, you have extensive background with the Gaels and the program, correct?
Yep, I graduated in '91, so I've been a fan since I got on campus there, which was right after the Pat Kennedy era ended. So there was kind of some mediocrity for quite a while there. But once things started going on an uptick and the internet was kind of born, around 1998 or so, I started an Iona Hoops message board, and now I've kind of had the URL address for IonaHoops.com for most of that time. So about 22 years now, I've run the message board. So you can find it there. We get a little under 1 million hits per year. So it's pretty active for a small fan base that Iona has. It's a very active message board. But I've also been involved with Iona in other ways. I graduated in '91, as I said. I've served 2 terms on the alumni board of directors. I've also served on the college's booster club committee for many years as well. So I'm very active in fundraising and of course supporting all athletics at Iona.
That's fantastic, Guy. And that sort of background here is going to be great and is going to help give us perspective on Iona. I want to start with the Gaels at the beginning of this year because certainly they've been the dominant team in the MAC now. If you look back, coming into this season, they had won 4 consecutive MAC tournament championships, and they have appeared in 7 consecutive MAC tournament championship games coming into this season. They were the definite favorite coming into the year, and they had 4 starters returning. But of course, head coach Tim Clues, fantastic coach, came over from CW Post, replaced Kevin Willard, who was there for a while. He had suffered a health problem that we really don't know a lot of details about. I don't know if you do, of course, there's privacy laws. And he was not with the team the entire year. Certainly, that's going to hurt a team's efficiency. So I guess I'll start with Coach Clues. Do you know anything? He has since stepped down, been replaced by Rick Pitino. But I would think, Guy, that really threw them for a loop to start the year.
Yeah, first of all, I should say that, Iona fans have been incredibly spoiled by having Tim, and not only having him for, usually in mid-major worlds, it's so cyclical that, you have a coach, he wins and he leaves. And there were certainly a couple opportunities where Tim was looking to leave, and it just didn't happen. So we had the benefit of having him here for as long as we did, pretty much the entire decade. And again, the amount of success has spoiled Iona fans to the point where we got to points where we were complaining about not being competitive in NCAA games against Ohio State and Duke and Oregon. And it's like, well, these are teams are like Elite Eight, Final Four. Do you really expect Iona to compete with these teams? I mean, so this year certainly brought us back down to earth. I mean, you kind of felt like as soon as that announcement hit right before the season started that Tim wasn't going to be on the sideline, that we're in trouble here. Things had been falling into place. We had gotten some waivers approved. Isaiah Washington was going to join us, as well as Mo Tiem. So we were excited to have a couple of players on board that we weren't sure if we were going to have. Everything, the facilities had just been upgraded over the summer, and anybody who's seen Iona's facilities, it's not a big facility, only seats 2,600, but it went from a high school gym to at least having a little more of an arena feel, where there's now stands on all the sides and a lot of upgrades, a lot of video boards, things like that. So the facilities were greatly updated. So there was a lot of excitement entering the year. And then in that news, you just kind of felt the air come out a little bit. And one of the things that with Tim is also, even the teams that won championships, they often got off to slow starts. Anybody who's followed Iona knows there's been a lot of turnover in the program. Tim likes to recruit, JUCOs and transfers, so you don't have them as long, and therefore there's a good amount of turnover each year, and it takes a while for the next season's group to gel a little bit. And again, knowing that we had a lot of newcomers coming in this year, and Tim has kind of become the master at like getting that together. Not having him there, just kind of, you sensed it. You sensed that this year wasn't going to be great. Of course, obviously we all would rather have Tim on the sidelines. We know it was killing him to be at home, just to not be able to come to games and participate in practices. I can't get into great details about what's exactly wrong with him. I don't even have that many myself. I just know it's an ongoing health issue that was expected to resolve and didn't, which kind of led to other people at Iona taking some action toward what would happen after this season ended.
Yeah, and a fantastic coach, fantastic person. So certainly we're praying for him. Hope him and his family are doing okay. And understandably so, that the team did struggle early in the non-conference there. They lost five games in a row, which actually came into the conference schedule as well with St. Peter's and Monmouth. They were really struggling. You and I were going back and forth. I was talking about against the spread. Iona really wasn't doing well. But then they did right the ship in mid-year. Around February 7th there, they rattled off 4 consecutive wins, 2 on the road, Quinnipiac, Fairfield, Manhattan, and Marist. Then they had to stumble against Siena away by just 1 point, and then Ryder and Canisius. So they had a good run there in the middle, and I think there was a chance, Guy, that this team could have done some damage there in the MAC conference tournament. Even though where they finished up at 9-11, tied there with Niagara right in the middle of the conference. But you always have to fear Iona, especially in the conference tournament.
Yeah, and the other thing that Tim's teams always did as the year went on, as they got better, everybody knows Tim's teams always score a lot of points. They're very fluid on offense. But when it came to late February and March, his teams always defended a little better. And if anybody who's followed me on Twitter and on Iona's Best Reports will tell you, I'm always saying, hey, defend and good things are going to happen. Just a little bit. When you score like Tim's teams always do, if you defend even a little bit, you're probably in pretty good shape, especially in a tournament setting. And during this year, the defense just wasn't there at all. They were just allowing teams to shoot 50% from the field. And then when they started winning games under Trey Arnold, who, again, was put in a ridiculously tough situation, there's a lot of anger toward him in terms of how this year went. You can't blame him for what happened this year. It's just not his fault. He wasn't hired to be the head coach. As a matter of fact, he wasn't even going into the offseason last year as being our number one assistant. He was Coach Eaton, who moved on to a Division II job, was actually in the first chair after Tim. So Trey Arnold had to move over 2 seats this year, which is a really big ask. So he went from being the second assistant focused on recruiting basically to, okay, now you have the keys to the favorite in the MAC. Oh, and by the way, we've won 4 state titles. Keep that going, will you? I mean, that's a big ask for a guy who just hasn't had any D1 head coaching experience. So I tried to support him all year long. It was a frustrating year for him, I'm sure, as well. And where Iona felt it the most, to get back on topic, was that the close games. Iona just lost a ton of close games. They lost 3 games in overtime. They lost another 4, I think, by 1 point. So And then there was a couple of they lost on a final possession and things like that. So there were a lot of close losses and then games that were tied at the end of regulation. I have to think if Tim were there, that you can't say he would have won all of them, but he probably would have won at least half of those, maybe even more, because just by him being there, and his experience in coaching game situations. So that's why I kind of felt like, as well as we were played during that stretch where we won 6 of 7, and then we ended the year with 3 straight close losses, and I was like, well, this is very telling that you're in a MAC tournament setting. I just can't see us winning a close game. And sure enough, again, we went toe to toe with a really good St. Peter's team and lost in the final possession again. So I mean that's the way the year went. There was potential, but we couldn't quite get over the top because I just don't think the coaching was strong enough. And it's not Trey Arnold's fault. It's just the way it went.
I totally agree with you. And now, of course, Guy, here comes Rick Pitino. I mean, having attended those Iona games with my wife, really enjoying them, I'm just giddy thinking about what is going to happen here in New Rochelle in this program. And you and I have mentioned they've already started grabbing recruits. Pitino, I believe, he settled the lawsuit with Adidas. He came out in his book and said, listen, I understand why I was fired because I was in control. Although I really had no direct responsibility for these issues that went on in terms of his involvement per se in what went on. But moving forward now, he's cleared, I think, right? And here he is. I mean, how did this come about? When did you first start hearing rumors that Rick Pitino could become an Iona?
Well, if you it's tough. And on Twitter, and I don't remember the handle that I first saw it on, there was a random Twitter handle that came up and said, hey, there are rumors out there that Pitino's going to be the next coach of Iona. And this was 2.5 weeks before the regular season ended. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. But I had also recently heard something at that time that something was brewing in terms of that kind of thing. And of course, I was sworn to secrecy. I didn't want to, it's not fair to Arnold. It's not fair to the kids playing now. It's not even fair to Tim, who still had a job at that point. But I had heard that some of that stuff was going on. So it was a couple weeks before the season started that some of those conversations started to become a little more known, but not public necessarily. Internal folks on Iona kind of knew about it. So it certainly wasn't a shock that once we were eliminated, that, a couple days later, Tim was announced that Tim was leaving, which I thought was done pretty well by the college. I was afraid that, how do you tell a guy who's won as much as Tim has, we know you're a legend here now, but you're sick, we have to move forward. It's such a delicate situation. I thought Iona handled it pretty well. I hope that we're going to continue to handle it well and that we're going to call the court Tim Cluess Court when we have our first home game next week.
That'd be great. Yeah.
I hope that I'm sure a lot of people have said that. I don't know what Iona is actually planning, but I'm sure something will come up there. And then of course, again, with Rick, when that news broke, it didn't completely shock me. I know it shocked everybody else. But at the time, Jared Grasso's name was being thrown around a lot too. So I wasn't certain. I thought maybe, hey, Tim was on board, but, Grasso was also interested and the players wanted Grasso. A lot of the fans wanted Grasso. I would have been fine with Grasso if I knew that Pitino wasn't going to be, on board. But to be fair, he is Rick Pitino, and he's one of the top 5 college coaches of all time, probably. Yes, he came with a whole lot of baggage, and there is a risk, and I think that there is a realistic chance. I know not everything is set in stone yet. I mean, he could still be suspended for a handful of games, maybe to open this season. We have no idea what the NCAA is going to come up with because they obviously put all that on the back burner when Rick went to Greece. So, why bother pursuing it if he's not even going to be in the country? But now he's back. Granted, I'm sure the NCAA has other things to worry about right now, but it would not shock me if something comes up. But if you're an Iona, and I've been telling people this for a while, if you're an Iona, you have to take this chance.
Oh, you have to. Absolutely. And I was thinking about it. I remember when he first was let go from Louisville, I was doing this podcast with my best friend. And I said, listen, he's absolutely going to be back. It's not even a question. And here he is. And his style, I think, meshes well with Iona and with their personnel. So let's take a look at the personnel. Coming into this year, like I said, 4 starters returning, E.J. Crawford, Tawan Agee were the top 2 scorers. Crawford's fantastic, 19 points per game, 5 rebounds. Agee 15 and 7 rebounds. Isaiah Washington was 11 and 5. Talk about the players. So a lot of these guys are seniors, but talk about who's coming back specifically from the team that they have now. What are you hearing? And of course, then we'll get into the recruits, which are coming in like a slot machine here, Guy. I mean, my goodness.
Yes, it's crazy. From what I understand, at this exact moment, no one has asked for a release. So that means that Isaiah Washington's back. Asante Gist, who was lost to injury this year, is supposed to come back. Colton Cashaw, these are all seniors. Colton Cashaw is a backup point guard. He's supposed to be back. Dylan Van Eyck, who got better and better as the year went on, as did Isaiah Washington. And those two, I think, were the reason why Iona started playing better toward the end of the year. Dylan Van Eyck is going to come back from what I understand as well. He will be a perfect addition to what Pitino wants to do on defense. Andrea Rostanovic as a backup big man, he is supposed to come back. So out of those 5 right there, Cashaw and Rostanovic played the least. And I would have thought if there was a potential for the guys to leave, it would have been those 2, knowing that, hey, they're just being over-recruited right now. They didn't get minutes a lot last year, and now look at what we're adding. So that said, they're both seniors, so they might just want to be along for the ride and, again, play for Rick Pitino. I mean, there's a draw there. So, but as of now, like I said, none of those guys have asked for release. That also includes 2 recruits that signed under when Tim was still head coach. Darius Brown is a junior guard, and Robert Brown is a junior forward center. As far as I know, both of them are staying on board. The only player that is, I'm not certain exactly what's happening with. Iona had a guard last year, a JUCO transfer, who was a junior. His name is A.J. McNeil. I know he had some injury and academic problems, and he was pretty much didn't play all year. It doesn't appear he's coming back, but I haven't seen anything official saying that he left. But I think he's not there anymore, even though I haven't seen anything official.
Yeah, and I mean, you talked about Washington. They, like you said, they had the tough loss there in the quarterfinals of the MAC to St. Peter's. But over his last 6 games, I mean, he had double digits in last 7 games, rather. 6 of their last 7 games. He had 24 big points in the win over Canisius, and then 16, 2 of 4 from 3-point range. So Washington is a guy, I think, who could really thrive with Pitino and can do some damage.
I agree. And what happened with these guys, too, is when they started winning this year, I know that, again, like I said, Tim was kind of involved from a distance with Trey and Trey Arnold. And I know he basically said to Trey, look, these guys are playing very inconsistent. We're trying to go too deep. Let's play the 5 core guys as much as humanly possible. And the one guy, you know what, I'm missing a player I mentioned, Isaiah Ross.
Yes,
he will also be a senior. He was playing a lot of the 3 this year, 2 or 3. Great outside shooter. And there was some rumors that he could transfer, but I haven't seen them. Again, I haven't seen anything else about that either. So Washington, Ross, Van Eyck, Crawford, and Agee basically played the vast majority of minutes, starting with the winning streak and through the MAC tournament, which is why I think they just ran out of legs. They had no backups. I mean, Isaiah was playing; they were all playing 35 minutes a game at that point. They just refused to rely on their backup players at all. Which is, they played their best 5, and that's a Tim trait as well. Though he would be a little more judicious in going to his bench than Trey was, but you go with the guys, you go with your best horses as much as you can, and I think Trey figured he had to do that. But those minutes add up, and especially playing St. Peter's, a deep St. Peter's team in MAC quarterfinal after playing a win in the play-in round the day before. Iona was up 8 with about 5 minutes to go against St. Peter's, and then got outscored something like 14-4 the rest of the way. So that's legs as more than anything else.
Yeah, and now we look at the players who are coming in. I mean, it's been coming fast and furious. Iona basketball recruits guy it's really pretty much been illustrated by that gif I love of the guy having popcorn and sitting back in his chair, because they're going to come quickly here. He was hired, Pitino, on March 14th. And right away, he ended up getting Ryan Myers, who we're looking at college options. Iona wasn't even one of them. But talk about Myers. Talk about some of the players we're hearing. There was one yesterday as well. I mean, it seems like they're loading up quickly.
Well, what we're seeing, this is like the Pitino effect, because everybody's like, how is he doing this? Nobody's visiting campus. They're not visiting with anybody in person. They can't do any of that with the coronavirus stuff going on. So how is this happening? This is Rick Pitino's name. It's as simple as that. These guys haven't seen Iona's, probably never even thought of Iona as an option until Pitino reached, somebody on Pitino's staff reached out and said, Rick wants you. And then, you hear Pitino's name. It's like, oh, really? And all of a sudden, kids from everywhere are interested. It's Rick Pitino. They there's a limit to it. It's still a small mid-major, Iona. It's still a 2,600 seat facility. It's still the MAC conference, which is, unfortunately, the last couple of years has not done as well as what it had done, as recently as the mid 2010s, where it was more like ranked 15th or 16th. Now it's kind of settling into the 20s, unfortunately, and Ken Palm. But it's still Rick Pitino. You get a chance to play for him, you want to take it. And it's funny because a lot of Iona fans are like, again, this is the spoiled thing. Well, we're getting some good players, but where are the 4 and 5 star kids? And it's like, really? I mean, we went from getting guys, and this is not a knock on Cluess and his recruiters the past couple of years. We were getting guys that fit Tim's system, which always worked in the past. So why change it? But you'd look and you'd hear, you never heard of these kids, and they had one other offer from another mid major or a small school, but it was the type of player that fit to Tim's system, and it always seemed to work out up until this past year. Here are guys now, and I can go through them all for you, who are getting recruited by bigger schools and bigger conferences in the MAC. So, yeah, we're not going to beat Duke and Kentucky for recruits just because Rick is here. I mean, the bottom line is we're still a MAC team, but these are the kids that you want. These are the kids that propel you to the top of the MAC and to propel you to have that shot of knocking off somebody in the tournament. So the first commit was actually Talik Chavez. Or Chavez, I guess. He's a combo guard from Garden City Community College, 6'1", great outside shooter. His final 2 were Iona and Tulsa. So again, that's another
good programs. Yeah.
So, and then you mentioned Ryan Myers. He's a 6-foot freshman guard from Christ the King, typical New York City guard. He's got all that skill set. He had a good number of major offers, like you said. Most recently, Temple again, all bigger schools. Great outside shooter. Looks like that type of Pitino guard. Then we have, I'm going to butcher his name, I think, but Beric Jean-Louis, who's kind of like a swingman, junior, 6'4", uber athletic. If you watch his highlight video, it's ridiculous. He's from Florida Southwestern JUCO. He was at New Mexico State before the JUCO, I mean. And his final 2 were us and Wichita State. And then, so if that wasn't enough, Rick decided to add 2 more yesterday. I'm hoping I'm getting the names right. Johan Crawford is a power forward. He's going to be a freshman, 6'9", former commit for St. Joe's. The kid's built like a linebacker, but he has finesse to his game. And he had most recent offers were from Boston College, Wyoming, and San Francisco. So he's from Sweden. He played for New York Rens, so he has that pedigree. So again, another kid that can, looks like he can step right in. And if that wasn't all big enough, we get Osborne Shima, again, hoping I'm saying his name right, is sophomore, 7'1" center from New Mexico Military Institute. He had offers from several majors, and he visited Rutgers last month. And, he's a slender kid, as you would expect. I mean, any 7'1" kid who looks athletic is not going to the MAC, no matter who's coaching it. So he's a slender kid at 7'1", but got a good skill set. And if they can put some pounds on him, look out. And I've seen a lot of people on Twitter calling him a major steal. So I think that's, again, that's this. I mean, will all 5 of them work out and be superstars? Probably not. But if 3 of them work out, and then you join with Isaiah Washington and Gist and Dylan Van Eyck, I mean, that's a core 6 right there. And then, again, you get these other guys contributing too. Then all of a sudden you have 10 guys playing, and you have that Pitino system in place.
It's incredible. It's really exciting because I believe, Guy, that the way college basketball is at its best is when you have these mid-major schools that are really making noise. I mean, who didn't love a VCU run? Who didn't love Wichita State when they beat Kansas? When you have these powerhouse mid-major schools that really end up making noise, George Mason, things like that, and Pitino coming to Iona, and the great thing is Iona was already at that level. Iona was already a dangerous team, dominant in the MAC. Now they add a Hall of Fame coach. They're getting the recruits. It's going to be super exciting, man. I can't thank you enough for a few minutes here. Folks, you have to follow Guy Falotico on Twitter, at Iona Guy F. Have to do it. This guy's going to be bringing you information and insight here. Rick Pitino's there. IonaHoops.com is a great site. You have to check it out. It's going to be super exciting here. So hopefully we get through coronavirus, everything settles down, and he's bringing them in. But Guy, we thank you for a few minutes here. It's a little reprieve from what's going on, and certainly, I think, understatement, exciting times in Iona right now for sure.
Oh yeah, we can. I mean, we're all itching for next year already. All the entire fan base. We can't wait, and we can't thank you enough for bringing all kinds of entertainment to all of us. Again, you're a great follow on Twitter, and in this time, Twitter is such a tool to entertain us and take our minds off of what we're going through, and you're a big part of that. So thank you as well. Great having you on, Guy. Get your popcorn ready for the Gaels. Here we go. Absolutely. Thanks a lot. I'm addicted to the appetite. It's a deceit and a